I had only a 10-hour labor, and then I only pushed for about 30 minutes, and I hardly tore. I was over the moon about my perfect labor and delivery, and then my baby got sent to the NICU. So let's talk about it. Hey guys, my name is Haley, and in this video, I'm going to give you my birth story. I gave birth 18 months ago in July of 2023. I think there was a lot of trauma that I was dealing with, and so I didn't really want to talk about it, but now I am ready to share our story. And I just really loved listening to stories like this when I was pregnant and anticipating birth and everything that could happen. And a lot of the stories about labor and delivery were extremely scary, and I was terrified. And so I wanted to share this story with you because for me, labor was not that difficult. For me, labor was actually very smooth. It was the aftermath that was really scary. So my baby was born 10 days early, and I was just so excited to get the baby out of me because I was in my last trimester in the middle of July in Arizona. It was so hot. I was miserable. My body hurt, and I was just so ready for this baby to be out of me. So for about 2 weeks before I gave birth, I started doing curb walking. I started drinking red raspberry leaf tea, I think as soon as it was safe to do so. And then I also just kind of started doing everything I could, all of the old wives' tales that were safe. On the weekend that I went into labor, my parents were in town. They live 3 hours away from me, and they were staying at a really nice resort, and they invited me over to go swimming. And they had actually bought me a wristband so that I could be there all day. So Saturday during the day I was supposed to go, and I just didn't feel good. I was just exhausted. I didn't feel extremely sick. I didn't feel different. I just was exhausted, and I had been exhausted for weeks, but to that day, it was just a whole nother level of exhaustion, which should have been my first clue, but I just thought it was pregnancy in the middle of July making me tired. I finally mustered up this strength and was like, okay, I feel bad because they paid for a wristband and they're not cheap, so I better at least go. So I got there. The pool closed at about 9, and I got there at probably about 7. It was just getting, like, the sun was just kind of setting. I was like, it'll be nice to swim because swimming really helps with the pressure because you get weightless, and it helps a lot with your hips, and it's just fantastic when you're pregnant. So I was like, okay, even though I'm tired, I guess I'll meet you guys. So I go swimming with them. I'm sitting on the lazy river, swimming, stretching, doing my thing, taking the stairs instead of the elevator because I want this baby out of me, and that can help. And then I go home at the end of the night, go to sleep, wake up at about 3 a.m. and I went to the bathroom, and I think I lost my mucus plug at that point, or at least part of it. And I don't know what woke me up. I just kind of woke up at 3 in the morning, and I'm assuming that's kind of when I started labor, but I just didn't know because I couldn't feel the contractions or anything yet. And so I went back to sleep because I was just so tired. Oh, I forgot to mention this. My husband is in the military, and he was gone for military stuff. He was in California, and we live in Arizona. And he was supposed to be gone for 2 weeks. Went back to sleep, didn't sleep too great. My stomach kind of was hurting. I just didn't feel great. So then I got woken up at about 7-ish in the morning to a pop. And I was just in bed. I was like, did my water just break? There wasn't really a gush. I sat up, and then the gush happened. Got up, went to the bathroom. Yep, my water definitely broke. I did not pee myself. So I called my mom. They were supposed to be going home in a few hours. And I was like, hey, I need you to get another night at a hotel. I think my water just broke. And she was like, oh my gosh, that was perfect timing because my husband's not here. At least I have my mom. So she's like, we're going to get dressed and we'll head over and go get you. So about an hour later, they arrived. During that hour, I knew I wasn't going to be able to eat at the hospital. So I ate a little bit of toast or something. I didn't feel great. I had one of those Boost nutrition shakes because they have a lot of vitamins and protein and stuff, and I needed something. After the water broke, that's when I started to kind of feel the contractions. I could tell they were like knocking the wind out of me, but the pain wasn't that bad. It was just like I couldn't do anything while they were happening. So I got in the shower. It felt really great. I like put the hot water on. It felt great on my back. Got nice and clean, put on a comfy outfit, and just kind of waited for them to come. And I think the hardest part of labor at that point during that hour was the anticipation because I was here by myself and I was really anxious. And I was like kind of trying not to panic, like, oh my God, this baby's coming. My husband's not here. My parents need to come get me still. And it's another 20 minutes to the hospital I'm supposed to go to. I waited. They came. They got me. We get loaded up in the car, grab my hospital bag. We get to the hospital and we go up to labor and delivery. They were like, okay, we're gonna like test and make sure it was your water and you weren't just peeing yourself, because that happens a lot to people. Like they think that their water broke, but they just peed themselves. But I definitely knew it was my water because there was a big pop. Like it felt like there was a balloon or something inside of me that like went. It didn't hurt. It was just like, whoa, that was interesting. And she's like, oh, yep, like, and you're already dilated to like a 2. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. They have this area in the hospital where you don't have your own room yet, but you're like in a private-ish area separated by sheets, but there's like a whole row of other beds for like an intake area. So I'm sitting in the bed, they're getting an IV started, checking to me to make sure the baby's okay, make sure I'm good. She's like, oh yeah, like you're good, like let's get you to a room. So they get me to the room. I have my own room. It's wonderful. My mom and stepdad are there with me. When my water broke, I called my husband and I was like, yo, my water broke, like you need to get here. Luckily he was able to come because a lot of military people and families like don't get to have their partner come, but he was just away for training, so they were like, oh, go for it, like you can go. For most people, their first labor lasts a really long time. So I was like, he's gonna have plenty of time to get here. It's like a 6-hour drive, but he'll have plenty of time. I was only in labor for 10 hours, so he barely made it. He's on his way. I'm in the room. I'm like, I want to do this naturally. I don't want the epidural. So the contractions are getting closer and closer. They're getting stronger and stronger. I get dilated to about a 4 at about noon, I would say. The pain was so bad and I had to get to a 10. I was like, there's no way. Give me that epidural. Like I was gung ho about doing naturally, but I knew that I would not make it. Like, I mean, I'm sure I would make it. People do it all the time, but they always say like, oh, there's no medal if you do it naturally. Let me tell you, if you do that naturally, you deserve a medal because there's no way. Like I was in pain and I was only at a 4. So they placed the epidural, and once the epidural hit, I was good. Like I was coasting. They had me back on my back for the first part, and if you don't rotate yourself with the way that the epidural is placed, you can have like one leg go numb. So just out of a like precautionary measure, they rotated me on one side for like an hour or 2 and then would rotate me on the other side for an hour or 2. And so I was numb the entire time from the time they placed it until a few hours after I gave birth. Like I was completely numb from the waist down. I just kind of laid there at that point. After I got to a 4, they put the epidural in and I was just chilling. Like I was just cracking jokes, laying there, laughing, like ready for this baby to come. My husband got there at like 1:30ish. So he got there after the epidural was placed and we were all just kind of joking around. My grandma got there and my sister. And because this was after COVID, I was able to have 4 people in the room. So I had my mom, my sister, my grandma, and my husband. I think next time I want just my husband in the room, but I'm really glad they got to be there to experience that. It was my mom's first grandchild, my grandma's first great grandchild, like, so it was a really special moment. By like 5 p.m., she checked me and she was like, oh, you're already at a 10. Like, your doctor's here. You want to start pushing? And I was like, sure. So I started pushing. She's like, whoa, okay, this is going to go a lot faster than I thought. And I only did like probably 4 rounds of pushing and he was out. I think the reason is because on TikTok someone told me, or like told TikTok to practice coughing and push with your cough muscles instead of like your poop muscles. Because in the hospital, they were like, push like you're pooping. And I was like, I remember that TikTok. So I pushed like I was coughing, and it's completely different abs that are stimulated. But yeah, I pushed him out in about 30 minutes. It could have been faster, but they wanted me to kind of pace it a little bit because they didn't want to just like push super fast and then cause a tear. I did tear a tiny bit and they had to stitch me up, but it wasn't, I don't think it was more than like a second-degree tear. And healing, it was just itchy. I think I would compare the healing process to like having a UTI, like when you go to pee and it kind of burns, and then the itchiness slash like discomfort would be equivalent to like a yeast infection if you've ever had that. So if you don't know what to expect with birth or the aftercare, that's kind of what I experienced. It wasn't anything unbearable. Uncomfortable? Yes. Unbearable? No. So after I had pushed him out, it was like green, like a green wave of fluid flew everywhere. It was disgusting. That's not necessarily normal. The reason it was green is because he had pooped in the womb, who knows how many days or weeks before. And as he was coming out, he took his first breath and breathed in some of that meconium. Because of that, he didn't start crying. They brought him over under the like billy light because he was a little jaundiced. Everyone was standing around him and I like couldn't see him, and I was like, what is going on? And like the nurses and doctors and stuff were kind of quiet, and my family was all elated, like excited, like, oh my gosh, that was so amazing, blah, blah, blah. My husband's standing over there by the baby, and they're all kind of like taking pictures and whatever, but I could kind of tell that something was wrong because he wasn't crying, and the doctors were like super serious. It's called MAS, Meconium Aspiration syndrome. They took him to the NICU. I got all cleaned up. They took me back to my room. I was laying there, and it was about 2 to 3 hours after I gave birth that we got to go up to the NICU to see him. And he was like very jaundiced, so he was under the lights. It was just me and my husband and the nurse, and I couldn't stand yet, so they wheeled me up in the wheelchair and I got to look at him. And then they took me back to my room after like 40 minutes, and then the next morning I was able to get wheeled up there again, and that's when I finally got to hold him for the first time. And it was just so surreal, but I think I had dissociated because I didn't cry. I didn't really feel anything. Like, I was just holding him and it just didn't feel real. So I don't think it quite hit me for like a few weeks after I gave birth, after I'd already brought him home. And like that's when the emotions started to hit. So everybody talks about this like bonding moment that you get with your baby, like when they're put on your chest. And I didn't get that because he was sent to the NICU, but I got to bring a baby home, and not everybody gets to say that. So I'm still like counting my blessings, and I'm sure I'll have more kids someday, and so I'll get to experience, that bonding moment. But with this baby, I just didn't get that for a few weeks, and that is something that definitely contributed to my postpartum depression. My anxiety was through the roof. I was terrified that he was going to like die of SIDS or something because he had these complications. But basically, like while he was in the NICU, he had a couple issues with his heart, he had a couple issues with his lungs. But by day 8, he was ready to go home, and we got to bring him home, and I was just so excited and so relieved. I was so ready to have my baby home. Every day they'd say, oh, maybe tomorrow, and then tomorrow would come and we'd be like, oh, can he come home today? And they'd be like, no, maybe tomorrow. Like his heart just isn't doing good. Like, I just wish they didn't do that. I wish they would have been a little bit more upfront about when we could take him home, but I could also tell that they didn't want to like make us nervous or like make us more scared than necessary. While he was in the NICU, we would go and visit him. I got discharged about 2 days after I gave birth, and we just kept going back to the hospital to visit with him. I almost felt guilty when it was my turn to bring my baby home because like some babies didn't get to come home at all and never would. And some babies wouldn't be coming home for months and months. And that's just, oh, it's just so hard. I just felt so happy that mine was coming home, but also so sad for all of the ones that weren't. And I just like, that's something that I'm still grappling with. So, anyways, I'm gonna mess up my makeup and I still have to film another video. So, enough of that. My baby's fine and he's the light of my life. And now he is getting into everything and being just a rambunctious little toddler. And I just can't believe how fast this went. But I'm going to stop rambling now and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.